Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of DirectConnect with Archer. Pleased to have with me today Stacy Bresler, another one of our managing partners. Say hello, Stacy. And I'm in March Madness mode. Little inside baseball. We're recording this just before the conference tournament weekend, and so I figured I was actually trying to create a little controversy with Stacy because I know Stacy's a big Ducks fan. Go Oregon Ducks!
Ducks are
Not
just
that
taking
I'm
the
not a
season
Ducks
off.
fan.
Yeah, we're just
Basketball
taking the
season. UConn Huskies. UConn. I gotta go with my birth state. So
There you
go Huskies. The women are looking unstoppable this year. The men, we'll see how they do. But anyways, we're not here to talk basketball.
What?
We might be talking about a little bit of March Madness in a sense, however, because it is March and there's. You might refer to it as madness, depending on your perspective and what you're looking at, going on over in the Middle East. And the operative question for today I want to talk with you about, Stacy, is does the risk to the bulk power system increase in times of war? The answer might seem obvious, but maybe not. What are your thoughts?
Well, I definitely think it's obvious, but to what extent I think is the situation, right? Any type of activity like that especially when the United States is involved, is going to elevate some risk to our bulk electric system. Certainly, those that are being attacked have a significant impact on their bulk electric system. But for the United States, I mean, that's kind of our focus here. The bulk power system, what risks does a war present to it? And I think there are some significant ones. Certainly state-sponsored attacks toward our grid would be something I would want to investigate, assure that I have some type of thought process around what I could do as an individual contributor to the bulk electric system, what additional controls I might want to consider, whether that be increasing my logging. Maybe there's some new IOCs out there I want to plug in to make sure my IDS is up to par. I think that's what I'm thinking of, Steve, is when I think about those type of risks, what additional things might I enhance in order to, not only protect my utility itself, but, protect the overall grid. And, we could speculate a lot about, what possibilities there are, but we do have some examples like in the water and wastewater and the PLCs where China had bots sitting there for years, right? Ready to go. So, there might be some things that we just can't control. So the other aspect of that risk is being prepared, be prepared for something odd to happen, where recovery is going to be a really big issue. And I think that's, a kind of a focus I would also put myself into is, are we ready for a quick recovery? How's our incident response plans looking like? I guess that's where my head goes. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I want to play off something that you started talking about, some of the things you might be able to do, and we see in times like this, we see a lot of recommendations that come out, and what I find interesting is oftentimes many of those recommendations are really long lead time things, and I think of in times of natural disaster, when the hurricanes come in, and I don't live in a hurricane area necessarily, but those that do, there's a point you get to where they say your preparation should be rushed to completion or should already be completed. It's too late now. It's just hunker down and wait. And I think to some extent with cyber, it's like that during wartime. The things you really need to have in place, you should have been doing those last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But even so, I think there are some things, right? There are heightened levels of awareness, heightened levels of alert. There might be some things you can tighten down that maybe aren't absolutely required, or there could be some additional due diligence you might put into place. I haven't seen a lot of discussion around that this time. I know a few years back there was the Shields Up campaign that the CISA had done, particularly in the electric sector. I didn't see anything like that this time. I don't know if that's a reflection of us being better prepared, and there's a sense that we are ready, or it's just a sense of if you're not ready, there's nothing you can do now to get ready. Just deal with whatever comes. So I'm not sure, but what are your thoughts on that? Is there things that we should be doing beyond what you've already talked about that are feasible and practical on short notice?
Well, certainly the communication part of it that you hit on, I think that's really big. Making sure you're plugged in and subscribed, to the different types of forums and newsletters and awareness and alert systems. If you're not plugged into the EISAC, do that. If you haven't logged in for a long time, you might want to do that. Make sure those alerts are going to the right people or right email address. As staying plugged in with CISA is definitely a good idea. Check those sites once in a while. Just stay informed is going to be a big factor. Like we've said this often, if it's truly a state sponsored attack, they're going to do something and you're not going to have anything to do to prevent it. They generally would utilize some kind of 0-day, attack forum that we haven't heard from. So we'd have to react. And that's why I kind of focus on the recovery component of it, being prepared for anything. Coupled with the communications, it might be time to have an extra exercise with a different scenario of your cybersecurity incident response plan, and also maybe the tie-ins to something larger, into a overall recovery business continuity type of exercise where it's not just a cyber incident. It may be associated with physical. Not thinking that we're going to have any military action in domestic USA, but it might be worth just evaluating that, and also evaluating your remote access controls. That would be a place I would focus on too, making sure I have good MFA in place. I'm not caching credentials on the MFA. I'm really challenging that every time there's a connection. Just look at those type of extra controls. You and I, Steve, we've used to talk a lot about, the best bang for your buck is security logging. Hopefully you're already doing a lot of security logging in your, relevant systems, to the BES. But, SIP standards don't really force you to do a lot with that unless you got a high impact, control center. You might want to look at things, every 15 calendar days, but, that's a summary, right? I think in times like this, you might want to, think about reviewing those logs a little bit more, looking, for different things, or tighten up your SIM, so it has different kind of configured alerts that you may not normally review. And I think those are good things to consider.
Yeah, those are good. It's kind of the equivalent of part of this is, make sure you got fresh batteries in your backup radio, and make sure you got fuel for your generator, and run down to the local supermarket and get the milk and bread before it's all gone. Kind of scenario.
Don't forget the snacks for the engineers; they'll have to stay up late.
The snacks for the engineers, absolutely. So, if you, just the quick rundown of checks, right? Just like you would do for a natural disaster or whatever it may be. You make sure you got gas in your car and things of that nature. So I was thinking of things like for response plans, having printouts of things that you might not be able to access. We're so used to being able to be online and grab information, but sometimes, what if your internal SharePoint went down? Would you be able to look up somebody's contact info? So having hard copies of your the key elements of your response plans, recovery plans, key contact info, testing some of your backup out-of-band communication methods, things of that nature.
I think that's really a good point, Steve. I was just thinking about that while you were talking. We've kind of freed up this BES cyber system information being able to be out in the cloud. And that, I think a number of utilities have taken advantage of that and bought into services where they have repositories of data that, such as recovery plans, might be out there in an encrypted format, but that's where you're used to going to get it. But if I was a state-sponsored attacker, I might attack an infrastructure like AWS, and maybe that's where that particular application where your repository is, and now all of a sudden it's not available to you when you might need it. And so thinking about that printout idea is a very good idea.
Yeah, DDoS attacks on internet connections. There's lots of
Hmm.
ways that can be done. The things we take for granted is being available. So, kind of game playing. What if those things actually aren't there?
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
that
that's
becomes a
that.
big factor. Um, I was also thinking about, um, you know, during military actions like this, it's a wait and see kind of situation. But you need to pay attention to what's going on with that as well. I would recommend, during this period of time, if you have some kind of committee or an opportunity to talk to your leadership, that this is a talking point that you bring up about these type of things that we should be considering doing. Maybe a little bit of freedom on increasing your budget a little bit to do some of these things that in the best interest of the business, right? And the bulk electric system. Those extra exercises, maybe the last three exercises you've done internally. Maybe this particular event that's happening right now is a good reason for having a third party come in and evaluate your processes for doing incident response and do that through a specific third party scenario and have them manage and facilitate those type of activities.
Along those lines, I want to bring up a topic that I know is near and dear to your heart, since you're an expert in this area, and that is
Hmm.
supply chain. Supply chain is definitely a attack point for us, and so what thoughts do you have on how people might think about their vendors and whether the vendors could be exposed in times of war and how that might impact and wrap around to a utility?
Certainly, yeah, that becomes a big issue as well. But I think that's one of the things that's too late, right? Um, Supply chain processes. If it's let's take back in the day, Cisco had some gray market firewalls and switches out there that had been compromised with a phone home type of capability, but embedded in the chip, right? So those were significant things that happened years before it was discovered. And I think that would be the similar situation for a supply chain here. There's certainly things you can do that if you haven't been doing them already is any firmware, any update to that you receive from your vendors. You do that hash checking after you download it. Make sure it is actually the download that you expect from them, the one that they put up there. So, prevent that man in the middle type of attack. But certainly the supply chain component of it is make sure that you know your vendors, know your suppliers. This probably isn't a time to go, oh, I can get it cheaper from this location. I never bought from this company. I don't know much about them, but man, it's a cheap price. It's about 50% off. That might be a tell that it's a
You
great
just got the
market
email,
tool or a
yeah.
compromise tool. So, yeah. But yeah,
Exactly.
supply chain is important, but again, it's one of those things that you should have already been doing, right? And in the heightened element of it is going, oh, these are things that we should have been doing. Maybe there's gaps that you can address. So using the event that's happening right now as a reason to be able to hyper focus on these type of security matters is a good thing to do, right? Maybe you already have a cybersecurity plan for the year that you're going to do, but this might be an adjustment opportunity for you to go back. Okay, we were going to do this thing, but maybe it's better if we just do, a penetration test into our OT network instead of, rewriting three documents. Um, just some ideas there.
Yeah, and looking at publicly available information, at least things that have been in the news. There's been uh, the Stryker, the medical device supplier
Mm.
Stryker, is probably the big one that we've seen that's been in the news. Um, not a whole lot more than that necessarily, which is a little bit surprising.
Wow.
But there's stuff happening. Obviously, we can be certain there's stuff happening behind the scenes, and I do have some limited access to some non-public channels through some programs that I'm involved with. I've seen some chatter here and there, but certainly not at the level of access that some of your core utility folks are going to have, particularly those who might have clearances or more directly involved with the ISAC and such. So making sure you're maintaining that connection, you're following what's going on, sharing things that you're seeing, critically important. Stay alert, and see something, say something. That's gonna potentially get you some information that may help you react before things go public. If they even go public at all.
That's true. And, being proactive is a good thing to do too. Don't wait for somebody to come and tell you. There's FBI fusion centers all over the country. If you have a connection there, give them a call, see what they can tell you. They may have some ideas for you to consider as well. They probably wouldn't be able to tell you anything that you haven't already heard about on the news, but they definitely can give you some kind of perspective. And if they do know something, they probably would lean towards some remediation, mitigation opportunities for you and give you some insight there as well. So, be proactive. Don't wait for somebody to come and tell you something. Go out there and try to look for it. I'm sure, like the EISAC, I bet you they're on high alert right now, looking for, any possible thing that might happen, to be prepared to, send those communications downstream. But it takes, any semi or real government agencies, they take a little bit of time to get some information. So just stay connected. Be aware that alert human aspect is very important in a good cybersecurity program, and that's something you should always have on. But in times like this, where there is a military action happening, that heightens that opportunity to hone in those awareness components.
Sometimes they can't tell you specifically what you should be doing, but sometimes what they do tell you is informed by things they cannot tell you.
Correct.
So if they say, you might want to look under the bed for ghosts, wink, wink, right? They might know something that you don't know. So pay attention to authoritative sources. Right? Sometimes there's more to the story that they can't tell you, but their advice should be heeded.
Sorry, when you started talking about monsters under the bed, I immediately went to Monster Inc., the Disney movie, and which led me to my favorite place in the world is Disneyland, which led me to think about the fact that their Monster Inc. ride was to be shut down, and now it's been delayed, and I'm excited about that, but that's way off topic.
Yes, but it's a happy note, so we'll end on
it was a happy thought. I needed that for
absolutely.
A moment, right?
So from March Madness, college basketball to Disney rides, surviving longer than expected, cover the gamut here. So thanks, Stacy, for your insights and expertise, and thanks everyone for joining us, and hope to see you again on a future version of Direct Connect with Archer. Stay safe.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.
Your support drives us forward. Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications, ensuring you never miss out on valuable insights. When it comes to safeguarding your business, Archer is your trusted partner. Explore our robust solutions at archerint.com. Get in touch with an email or phone call and fortify your company's defenses. We value your input. Share your thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like us to cover, and tune in every other Wednesday for a brand new episode of Direct Connect.